If you're painting a classic Space Marine, you arguably already are using heraldry if you're using a shoulder pad with a symbol or what's known as a charge on the center of it.
There's ownership and identity in that, in the same way that heraldry would be you are serving that lord. You are that lord wearing that colour of your family. And as a Space Marine, once you don your battle plate, you are showing the world, and I start to feel like an Imperial Fist talking like that, we will wear our yellow on our fist and we will march for Rogal Dawn, and yeah, you are proudly showing, here I am, I'm gonna find out, Xenos.
That's Rob Grayston, a friend of mine who's a bit of a heraldry nerd. He's recently published a supplementary book for the Warlord Games' Hail Caesar system around the War of the Roses. But what's he actually talking about? What is heraldry?
Heraldry, to refer to someone's shield, that's often how people mean it. So normally when people say heraldry, they just mean coat of arms. In and of itself, heraldry is the system and way we talk about the stuff that goes on coats of arms, and it's the lexicon language, how we talk about it, how you create heraldry, how it splits and mutates and changes and develops.
If you're in Western Europe, you might see heraldry on a daily basis. A football team, a local government or council, even UK supermarkets have a coat of arms. But heraldry as we know it largely begins in Western Europe around the 12th century. But the roots of heraldry stretch back far further than that.
You could say heraldry begins when people start to use various pictures to represent specific groups or specific people. You could say that there are Roman legionaries who are represented or using certain devices.
You might think of some designs that ancient warriors drew on shields, such as Greek hoplites drawing a Medusa head on the front of their round shield, or maybe a Viking with a dragon or sea serpent on their kite shield. Rob says that these were more just designs, but it's likely that certain warriors would become known for certain symbols on their shields. But it's not until the 12th century that we start getting formalized rules for heraldry.
So if you look at earlier medieval stuff, I guess 1100s, mid-1100s, people will use various symbols, signs, very basic compared to what came later, but it's not until after that that you start to see dedicated, yes, there we go, there's a big blue star. That's obviously one of the De Veres, the Earls of Oxford, and that stuff comes later. You have colleges of heralds, and the heralds will go round and they'll do things like check who's been killed in battle and be there at tournaments to, announce people and make them feel good about themselves, and pass messages between different groups, sometimes smack talk. But heraldry as the College of Arms, we'll want to talk about it, is probably kicking off maybe 12th century-ish.
The College of Arms is the official heraldic authority for England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and much of the Commonwealth, including Australia and New Zealand. And it's still actually going. They run a .gov.uk website, link in the description, where you can subscribe to their newsletter. They're in charge of granting new coats of arms and maintaining the registry of the coats of arms. They also specify that coats of arms belong to specific individuals and families, but there is no such thing as a family name, unlike something like a tartan in Scotland. Now that we've got our shield, what do we put on it?
You'll have a field, which is the shield itself, and then you can put various stuff on top of it. So you might have some charges, which are the pictures, you might have some ordinaries, which are the... So we have, for example, here we go. Here's Warwick, the Kingmaker, the charge to show that it's Warwick. You've got a bear and a ragged staff there.
If you're a fan of vexillology or flag design, you'll recognize some terms like field to represent the background of the design, as flags share a common relative in the form of the heraldic banner or standard. Surrounding all of this is the subject of tincture, which can roughly trace back to the 13th century. It's the arrangement of color on the coats of arms. Tincture famously has a rule that metal should not be put on metal, nor color on color. But what the hell does that actually mean? Well, by color here, they are broadly speaking about the arrangement of the 5 common colors. That's azure or blue, gules or red, purpure or purple, sable, black, and vert or green. And the metals referred are ore or yellow, which represents gold, and argent or white, which represents silver. So what they're saying here is that on your coat of arms, you shouldn't put yellow on white or red on green. But why not? Basically, to keep your coat of arms distinguishable and visible, as yellows and whites tend to blend into each other. Now, there are an endless list of exceptions to the rule. For example, if you're dividing your field in two, you can actually have two metals or colors next to each other. So speaking of the colors, do they actually mean anything for coats of arms? To some degree, but there are no unified, overarching definitions of what each color defines. Red can mean courage, as well as martyrdom or magnanimity. It's really up to the designer to imply meaning. Now, a great tool to come up with some inspiration for designing a coat of arms is Armoria, a free online coat of arms generator. Generally speaking, when you're designing your coat of arms, pick a color or metal for the field. This field can have a division into different segments like halves and quarters. If you're using an ordinary or a shape, that goes on top of the field. These come in all sorts of shapes and are usually very distinct dimensional polygons, like crosses, saltires, chevrons, bends, fesses, pales, and chiefs. Finally, you have your charge. This is the symbol that you use on the top of the field and ordinary. You can find a huge list of different charges and other symbols found on coats of arms on the hallofnames.org.uk. Different charges have different forms. For example, the lion can be rampant, with the lion on its hind legs and one arm raised higher than the other, or couchant, where it's resting with its head up. This is amongst a number of other positions, which are dependent on how many arms are raised and whether it's reared, walking, or resting. You can normally apply these to other animals, both real and mythic, that you can place on your coat of arms. Now, the rule of tincture has had various exceptions. Famously, the Kingdom of Jerusalem with its metals-only coat of arms, and as more and more lords and knights entered the College of Arms, it got more and more difficult to keep the rules of tincture intact. Many new colours got added after the initial ones, like tenne or tawny or orange, sanguine, blood red, or murrey. These three are known as the stains, and there became so many exceptions that some now argue that the rule of tincture is entirely meaningless. There's obviously a lot more to tincture, but generally speaking, tincture isn't just about aesthetic, it's about clarity. If your soldiers can't tell friend from foe in a dust cloud, someone's going to get shot at by accident. So think of tincture like early graphic design rules. Clean shapes, bold contrast, and making things instantly recognizable. Now, doesn't that sort of thing sound really familiar to someone playing with models on the tabletop?
As we know with Space Marines, there's generally a big chapter icon, but there's various other things that they use. So Space Wolves, all of the great companies, they've got lots of different symbols. You've got your Ragnar Blackmane style wolf and chapter heraldry for their respective great companies, and that's a really nice way of showing that there's the affiliation, but also there's a degree of individualization.
Now, you're probably thinking when it comes to Warhammer that the most obvious heraldic faction in all of Warhammer are the chivalric Bretonnians, who take obvious inspiration from the medieval era. Many of the original Bretonnian miniatures themselves were sculpted by the Perry twins, who have become famous for their historical miniatures. And the Bretonnians are easy ways to get your coats of arms and heraldic imagery, but Space Marines are really designed as knights in space. So they are a great way to do simple heraldic schemes.
Howling Griffins I love because that yellow and red and the Howling Griffin, it's a fantastic archetypal heraldic design. and you can do stuff with the whole griffin, with the griffin's head, with claws, or the executioners, the mantis warriors, the space sharks, or Carcharodons, I'm supposed to call them now. Lamenters, fantastic use of black and white check, which is interesting because it's not used much elsewhere, but when you do see the black and white, unless you're Goths for some reason, that's a conspiracy. Have you ever seen a Lamenter and a Goth in the same room? The black and white with the heart and drop, that's really powerful imagery, especially because we know that they're basically a very unlucky and very tragic chapter, so that's a really good way of going, isn't this, the heartache, this is awful for them. But yeah, so I would go for a big, clear symbol, and having mentioned the Goths, it goes for the orcs as well, and the orc clans. Snake bites, big snake.
Space Marine chapters, Chaos Warbands, Knight households, Tau sets, and even Orc clans, they all use colour, iconography, and design to show allegiance, identity, and legacy. Exactly what heraldry is. And when you start homebrewing your own schemes, that's essentially the modern version of what medieval knights were doing some 800 years ago. So if you're designing your own chapter, house, or knightly order, try thinking in heraldic terms. What colors represent their beliefs? What creature or icon defines their history? How do they want to be seen on the battlefield?
You want a nice, easy to recognize symbol. You don't want it too complicated. And then one or two colors, just because that's easiest. Most Space Marine chapters don't have lots of color going on. Some of them might just have one, but two's good because you always need an accent colour for special characters or something. But that's the best way of doing it. And there's something quite sort of cool about just here's a big bit of primary colour and then a symbol that you look at and go, I know exactly who they are and what they stand for.
So keep it simple, keep it bold, and make it personal. Because in the grim darkness of the far future, or if you're fighting battles in the world of legends, your colour scheme might be the only thing telling your opponent which one of you is about to get punched in the face by a chainsword or shot at by an arcane bodkin. Now, I have barely scratched the surface of the heraldry itch. It's a rabbit hole that runs deep, and you can get lost in it quite easily. I've listed a bunch of resources in the description that you can use to learn more. Now, I spoke to Rob a bunch more about heraldry, and you can find that chat up on my Patreon for all members now. You can access it from just £3 a month, and it really helps the channel out.
Speaking of, a massive thanks to my Tabletop Parlour patrons, including newest member Grimble. And some fun news for you, if you're in the UK, I'm now an affiliate member of Wayland Games, who have a huge selection of Warhammer and other minis at a great discount on Games Workshop prices, with free postage on orders over £20. Use my link in the bio to tell them I sent you. And if you'd like to watch some more, something should be popping up on screen right about now.